In the last few weeks of May 2021, we took the final steps in getting our boat and ourselves ready to start the Great Loop. At home, we arranged to have our lawn mowed and snow plowed while we are away, and family members will be checking on the place from time to time. Our mail will be forwarded to us at various locations as we move along. Provisioning for the Great Loop is not as big a project as you might think. It may be a 6,000-mile trip, but you're rarely very far from shore, or a grocery store, or a restaurant. A couple weeks worth of groceries should be fine to get us started. Our previous video listed several of the improvements and updates we made before this trip. In addition to those, the engine and transmission were serviced and all fluids and filters changed. A 12-volt fan was added to the flybridge for hot days. The raw water impeller was changed, and a second bilge pump was installed in the forward bilge area. All this was in addition to other updates and improvements we've done over the past couple of years. New refrigerator and stove in the galley, new alternators and starter, decks were stripped and refinished, and some obsolete electronics were removed and replaced with 2 new 10-inch Android tablets running Navionics. We also installed a new depth finder. All the hoses to and from both heads have been replaced. And just before launching, we had the bottom sanded and painted with ablative paint. We left the marina around noon on June 5th, 2021. Our first day was to be a 22-mile run across Oneida Lake, west to Brewerton, where we'd spend the night at SK Yards Marina. From Brewerton, New York, we headed west to Baldwinsville. At one point, while getting hooked up to shore power in Baldwinsville, I accidentally powered up one of our battery chargers with our inverter. This was quickly fixed, but I was surprised by how quickly our house battery bank voltage had dropped in the few seconds it was running the charger. The next day, I did some tests and determined the batteries in our battery bank needed to be replaced. This was an unplanned expense, but without a healthy bank of house batteries, we wouldn't be able to anchor on our own. We'd need to travel from marina to marina. So I made some calls and ordered 6 new GC2 batteries from the Napa store in Newark, New York. We'd be there to pick them up in a couple days. From Baldwinsville, we traveled to Clyde, New York. In Clyde, it seemed a little too hot to cook, so we ordered some food delivered from a local restaurant. We arrived in Newark, New York on June 8th. After checking to be sure that the batteries were there, we relaxed and planned to do battery change-out the next morning, after the engine room had a chance to cool down. The next morning, I wrestled the old batteries out of their enclosure and installed the new ones. While we ran them through an initial charge and some diagnostics, we relaxed and took the rest of the day off. The next day was Thursday, and we left Newark for Fairport, New York. A canal-side dam had failed near Lock 30, so water depth between locks 29 and 30 was only about 5 to 6 feet, rather than the usual 12 feet or so. We We proceeded slowly with a group of 4 other boats sticking to the center of the channel. We churned up a bit of mud along the way, but we made it without incident and spent the night in Fairport. On Friday, June 11th, we made the run from Fairport to Spencerport. It was an interesting ride through a part of Rochester, New York that practically no one sees anymore. The old canal was lined with trees and vegetation, but if you looked a bit closer, you could see that you were passing by miles of old abandoned industrial structures. Abandoned wharfs, pipelines, and warehouse sites were everywhere. It resembled an undiscovered Mayan ruin. We arrived in Spencerport at about 2 p.m. I gave the boat a quick bath, and we had dinner at Texas Barbecue. And so this is where we leave you for this week. Adios.